Hello and welcome to a special episode of Horror Hall. John, what will we be discussing today?
Well, today we'll be discussing the slasher genre. We'll be going over how it's changed over the years, and also throughout the show, we'll talk about our favorite slasher movie and our favorite character in a slasher film.
Sounds like a great lineup, and with that, let's get started. So, John, how would you define a slasher movie?
Well, there's tons of different, genres within the horror genre, and there are the paranormal movies, there are the torture movies, and then you get to the slasher movies, which are personally my favorite. It's that classic formula that almost nobody can mess up, and it's you get your group of teens or whatever, you get them in a house or some kind of cool setting, and then you just pick them off one by one, and usually you have to have some good characters, some witty dialogue, bad acting. It's just, I don't know, I love it. It's a recipe for success.
Right, and there are very many variations of the slasher. Like, you can range from the serious, like Halloween or Last House on the Left slasher, but then you can get to like Sleepaway Camp, where it just kills for fun.
Yeah. There's definitely fun slashers, and then there's serious slashers, and you have to accept them for what they are. I feel like, kind of thing, but they're all in their own way. They have their own charm to them, I feel like, no matter if it's a comedic film or a serious film. Towards the early 80s, from like 81, which is the year of the slasher, that would probably be the year you got the most serious, and the most as well. You just got so many. I think they made over 50 slasher movies in that 1 year, which is crazy. They would just come out like every weekend. There'd be a new one out, trying to capitalize off the success of Friday the 13th in 1980. But towards the latter half of the 80s, you definitely had more comedic, comical ones, like Night of the Creeps, like Child's Play, the Sleepaway Camp sequels. That those were definitely more of the comedic slashers towards the later 80s.
Right, but of course the slasher started very early 60s. I think it was 59 or 60 when Alfred Hitchcock had Psycho.
Yeah.
And that other movie, Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom, which, Psycho was the masterpiece of the two. And then Peeping Tom was the one that established some of the camera shots.
Yeah,
The POV, the point of view shots, from the killer himself. Like you see through the eyes of the killer, which has always been a really cool camera angle to me. And I also really, really liked that they went on with that for Black Christmas, John Carpenter's Halloween. They used that in a lot of slashers to come in the following years. That was just one of the things taken from Peeping Tom that I really liked.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that, as we've come into the new millennium with all the slasher remakes, that's one element that's always been missing, is that you've never had a killer POV shot in Nightmare or Halloween or the Friday remakes. It's always just been nothing but the slashes.
Yeah, and the characters aren't as memorable nowadays. The score, the directing, just I don't feel like they're making the movies for us as fans to enjoy them. I feel like they're making them just to make a quick buck, which is really unfortunate. But let's go into some of our favorite slashers. Will, give me one of your favorite slashers.
Well, my favorite, I don't know if it's maybe my favorite, but the one that's closest to my heart has to be first slasher I've ever seen in Halloween 2 from 1981, another year of the slasher movie.
That's one of the big ones from the year of the slasher, but go ahead, talk about it.
With Halloween 2, it takes place all of 5 minutes after the first one ends. It's like it's a direct sequel, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it just has the dialogue from the first Halloween with Donald Pleasance as Loomis, just all the things about evil is here. All he does is continue that. And then he has
death has come to your little town, sheriff. And all I love the dialogue.
He has more of the serious dialogue there, but then he also has just ones that are still kind of serious, but also kind of fun, like when he's driving with the police officer who's taking him away from Haddonfield, and he's like, "You need to come back. We have to go back to the town." And the officer's just like, "No." He just whips out his pistol, and he goes, "What is it you folks normally do? Fire a warning shot?" And then
he blows the
window
out,
and he just turns right around.
Yeah, that's a great thing that they did back in the 80s. I feel like even the early 80s, they balanced it very well. They balanced the comedy with the seriousness, and I feel like that's something that we haven't been able to do with the slasher genre, especially over last 10, 15 years. I mean, it's either straight up comedy. That seems what it is now a lot. It just it plays off comical. Even if they're trying to be serious, it just comes off comical to me. But Getting into one of my favorite slashers, I would have to go with the original Friday the 13th. I think that's one of my favorite original slasher movies. Granted, I feel like some of the sequels, precede the original, but with that original idea, that was just a product of its time. You got a bunch of kids, you put them in a camp, you don't know who the killer is, and one by one they're getting picked off, and unique creative ways. And then you had the special effects factor, Tom Savini, the master of special effects, who has, I think, a class in New York, so you could go there if you want to, if you're into makeup effects and stuff like that, and you can learn from the master himself, who, Tom Savini went on to do so much more stuff, like Maniac in the same year, The Burning the year after, so much more stuff, Creep Show, just so much great effect work back in the late 70s, early 80s. But I love Friday the 13th's formula. I feel like it was the first movie to really establish here are a bunch of kids, get to know them, like some of them, hate some of them, they're going to die. And I know some people are probably really against like horror movies and stuff. They're like, oh, that's just horrible. Like, what is your taste in film? Like, I don't understand. You just don't want to watch people die. No, I just want to be entertained for an hour and a half, to be honest. And I really do get entertained by the Friday the 13th movies. All of them, really. They always pack a punch.
Yeah, and one thing I really think that makes Friday the 13th stand out is that what Harry Manfredini did with the score of the movie
absolutely
was just, first off, it was just beautiful score. It was great music. But also, he didn't go for any jump scares like we have a lot now. Like, there's a scene where...
exception of the end.
With the exception of the end, which is what made it so good.
What made it so amazing, because you didn't have any of that, so you were like,
it's
give up.
Well, to elaborate a little bit, is basically throughout the film there would be times where there would be like a thing that isn't by the killer. Like, the only time there would be any dramatic music is when the killer's there. But, like, there would be a scene where, say, one of the girls is just setting up the archery range, and then just someone who's not the killer, like, just fires an arrow at the range, and she jumps a little bit, and as an audience member, you might a little bit too. But there was no score there, which made you believe that music was only there with the killer, which is why at the very end, when you have all that very nice music,
monotone,
she's all out on the river,
everything's okay, and then I don't want to ruin the ending for anybody if that hasn't seen it, but it is just, epic. You never see it coming. It's one of those things. And now I feel like that's been a cliche. I feel like every movie has tried to be Friday the 13th, have that big twist ending, like, oh my God, but I feel like Friday the 13th did it first. Like, people would tell you Carrie did it first, because Friday the 13th has admittedly said they've ripped off Carrie, like the shock ending or whatever. But
and Halloween, which Cunningham went out and said he made this movie ripping it off.
Yeah, I don't know if he ripped off the ending of Halloween, but he definitely ripped off the idea of a shock ending. But nobody really remembers the Carrie ending. And we all remember the ending of Friday the 13th, that epic, just everything's okay, and then, oh my God, everything's not okay. And it's just, that's just a primal instinct of fear I think we all have. Like, okay, we're all relaxed. And then when something happens, we as an audience just jump, popcorn goes flying everywhere or whatever. It's really cool.
Right, basically. So you've talked about how one thing you love about in the horror genre, you have the few characters that you would love or hate. So what would you say is your favorite character? Either your favorite character that you love to love or your favorite character that you love to hate?
Well, I've seen so much over the years, but I would have to go with Ethel from Friday 5. I think that is the greatest film character of all time. I can't say much of Ethel's dialogue because she's, she kind of had a potty mouth, but oh my goodness, like, you just want to talk about a great performance. You have this woman dressed up, and she's really actually like skinny in real life. She's clean, like, then they make her look fat, grotesque, and all this stuff, and basically she lives right next to the psycho ward, where all these kids are, and then one by one Roy, the killer in Friday 5, is killing them off. And it's a fun slasher. You have some cool like characters as well, like Reggie the Reckless and the kid that the fat kid who gets hacked to death over a chocolate bar. just some funny themes. But I really, really enjoy Ethel's character because she was one of the first characters that just really wasn't even involved in the plot. She was just there to make you laugh, and she did her job. And it's just I was upset when she finally gets it. I was really really upset.
Yeah, she was one of those characters who was basically just comic relief, similar to the two cops in Last House on the Left, where they had no purpose in the movie whatsoever, but every once in a while you cut to them and it's like, okay.
Yeah, but which with that movie I feel like was kind of a flaw. Like I feel like that's a big flaw of that movie because the themes in that movie is really serious, and then cutting to a bunch of cops that forgot to fill up their police car with gas I always thought that was kind of stupid. Even Wes Craven has gone on to say that he kind of regrets doing that, but I know what you mean. Like it's comic relief in the movie, but
Yeah.
Ethel, nobody did it better than Ethel. How about you though? Who's your favorite character?
Ooh. Favorite character in all slashes. That would be hard, but I'd say my favorite use of a character would have to be Tina from original Nightmare on Elm Street. Because it
Oh.
opens up with her. Everything is based kind of from her perspective up until her death. And it's like the first 20 minutes, it's all about her. It's to the point where you are positive that she's the main character. And then you just get one of the most brutal deaths of the entire series.
One of the most brutal deaths ever filmed, in my opinion. That's just that scene is forever, sketched in my mind.
Yeah, both when we see it in real time and when we see it like in the dream. And she sets up one of my favorite lines ever when Freddy's like getting her and she's just like, please God. He just whips up his glove and goes, this is God.
Yeah, Freddy himself is a great slasher character. I mean, when I talk slasher characters, I mean more of the characters that are getting slashed. But of course, you have your Michael Myers, your Jason, your Freddy, your Leatherface, your Pinhead, your Chucky. Those are the ones that most people know at least. But I really did like Tina. I think you're right about the fact that the way they used her was great. It's almost like a false start. Like, okay, this is your main character. Oh my God, we killed her off. Almost like Janet Leigh in Psycho. You think she's going to be the main character, and then 30 minutes in, the most famous shower scene of all time when she gets hacked to death in the shower. And you're like, oh my God, like they just killed off Janet Leigh. And also like Drew Barrymore in Scream. Again, a Wes Craven thing. That you think, because she's on the poster, it's like Drew Barrymore in Scream. You're like, okay, Drew Barrymore is going to be the lead. And then when you kill her in the first 5 minutes, it lets the audience know that anything can happen, that anything can happen at any time. No one's safe. Anyone can die. And I think that is just a brilliant direction move. But I think that's going to be it for now. Thank you very much for joining us. And that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Horror Hole Radio.